Magic Tea House, Book Number 53. A Merlin Mission. Shadow of the Shark by Mary Pope Osborne. Chapter 5. Yucatan Theme Park. There, those are the steps I was talking about, said Annie. She pointed to a rickety wooden stairway clinging to the side of the cliff. That? Said Jack. I know it doesn't look safe, said Annie, but I don't see any other way to get up there. Jack looked up and down the beach. Me neither. I guess we'll have to try it. Lugging their bag, Jack followed Annie to the stairs. Annie started up first, the weathered boards creaking with her weight. Careful, said Jack. Hold on to the railing. You too, Annie called down. Jack started climbing the rickety stairway. Gripping the handrail, he took one step at a time as the wind shook the stairs and the sound of drums and flutes floated down from above. Suddenly, Jack's foot broke through one of the boards. Hanging on tightly to the railing, he leapt to the next step as the broken one crashed to the ground. You okay? Said Annie. Yeah, barely, Jack answered. As he kept climbing, he clung to the railing and gingerly placed one foot after the other. Finally, he followed Annie from the top step onto the rocky ground at the top of the cliff. We made it, Annie said. I can't believe they built such a bad staircase, said Jack. They probably wanted to look as real as possible, said Annie, like in olden times. Yeah, but how about safe, said Jack. If someone falls or this whole thing comes crashing down, people could really get hurt. We should tell our hotel to post a warning or something, said Annie. Yeah, avoid the rickety staircase with a broken step, said Jack. As he caught his breath, he listened to the drum and flute music coming from behind the stone wall. The smell of wood smoke filled the air. By now, the full moon had risen over the park, giving everything a bluish tint. It sounds great, doesn't it? Said Annie. Yeah, it does, said Jack. He had to admit that the theme park show seemed really inviting. I wonder how we get inside, said Annie. Hold on, said Jack. He took out their travel guide. By the light of the moon, he studied the map. It looks like a wall runs all the way around the park, and the entrance is on the other side with a ticket booth. Oh, and there's a visitors bureau. They can help us find a hotel. But we're checking out the show first, right? Annie said. Sure, let's go, said Jack. As they started along the wall, bellowing horn sounds came from inside the park. Whoa, what's that? Said Annie. She ran ahead. When Jack caught up with her, she was looking through a narrow opening in the wall. It's definitely a song and dance spectacular, she said. Look at the great costumes. Annie stepped aside so Jack could peek through the opening. He saw the long shadows of stone buildings. In front of the buildings was an open square, bright with firelight. Dancers and musicians were performing around a roaring bonfire. Dozens of people watched from the sides, some standing and some sitting on the ground. It looks great, said Jack. Let's find the entrance. Oh, let's just sneak in through here, said Annie, before the show ends. What about our tickets? Said Jack. If we spend time looking for the ticket booth, we'll miss the show, said Annie. We can pay on the way out. This is a chance of a lifetime. Okay, said Jack. Yes, said Annie. She turned sideways and slid through the narrow opening. See? No problem, she said from the other side. Take this, said Jack. He pushed their bulky bag through the opening. Then he squeezed sideways between the thick slabs of rock. Jack took his bag back from Annie, and they hurried across the grounds of the park. When they got close to the bonfire, they stood near the back of the square. The male dancers had feathered headdresses and beautiful feathered cloaks. They wore arm and leg bracelets made of gold and silver. They had painted faces and tattoos. Some of them waved spears and shields as they shook their bodies. Near the dancers, several musicians played wooden flutes. Others rattled hollow gourd instruments and rang loud bells. Some clapped sticks together, while still others banged huge turtle-shell drums and blew on giant conch shells that made deep bellowing sounds. While the dancers danced and the musicians played, actors moved about in front of the crowd, miming a story. They wore jaguar masks, crocodile masks, and bird masks. They bowed to two regal-looking men who sat on throne-like wooden seats on a platform. The two men wore enormous headdresses and animal skin capes. Behind them stood a row of feathered warriors. I'll bet those two guys are supposed to be ancient Mayan kings, whispered Annie. And the ones behind them must be their bodyguards. This is spectacular. Jack had to agree, even though none of it made sense to him. He looked around at the crowd watching the show. He noticed that the women and girls wore colorful dresses and large pieces of jewelry. The men and boys wore loincloths or feathered robes. Many men wore headdresses. Don't you think it's a little weird that everyone in the audience is wearing a costume? Jack whispered. I love it, said Annie. Maybe this show is like a reality show, where even the audience plays a part. I'll bet when you buy a ticket, you get a costume. I'll find out. She stepped over to some young boys in feathered robes who were watching the dancers. Excuse me, she said. A couple of boys turned around and looked at her. They jumped back as if frightened. Before Annie could ask about their costumes, one of them darted to a woman, grabbed her hand, and pointed to Annie. The woman cried out in alarm. Whoa, what's that about? Said Jack. I think they're just acting, Annie said. More and more people were turning to look at Jack and Annie. Some whispered and pointed. All had expressions of fear and wonder. I don't think these people are acting, said Jack. Really? Said Annie. Yeah, this feels really weird. The music stopped. The musicians put down their instruments and stared with the rest of the crowd. Several men with spears started toward Jack and Annie. Let's go, said Jack. Wait, said Annie. It's part of the show. Don't you want to play a role in it? No, let's go, said Jack. He grabbed Annie's hand and pulled her along, heading back the way they'd come. As he hurried toward the wall, he heard shouting behind them. When they reached the narrow opening, Jack looked over his shoulder. The feathered men with spears were coming right at them. A few curious children were following the spear carriers. Jack frantically tried to push the bag through the opening ahead of him, but it got stuck. He shoved as hard as he could, but the bag didn't budge. "Don't you want to find out what's going on?" said Annie. "No, I just want to get away from this crazy show," said Jack. "I don't want to perform in it." "Too late," said Annie. Jack looked back. The feathered warriors had nearly reached them. Jack pulled hard on the bag, yanking with such force that he fell backward and the bag landed on top of him. A moment later, spear carriers were standing over him. Several surrounded Annie, too. "Hi," said Annie. "This is all part of the song and dance spectacular, right?" None of the men answered. "We didn't know where to get tickets," she said. We thought maybe we could pay on the way out." Again, no one answered. Instead, the spear carriers turned to one another and spoke in frantic whispers. "Who are they? What are they? Where did they come from?" A girl about Annie's age stepped forward. Like Annie, she had long, thick braids and bangs, but her hair was shiny black. The girl stared at Annie curiously and then smiled a big smile. "Why did they stop the show?" Annie asked the girl. "What's going on?" The girl kept staring at Annie. "Who are you?" she asked. Before Annie could answer, a woman rushed forward, grabbed the girl, and pulled her away. One of the warriors pointed his spear at Jack. "Come," he said, "to the House of Columns." Actually, we'd rather go to the hotel zone," Jack said. The man stared at him. "But whatever's closest," said Jack. "We're not picky." The warrior gently prodded Jack with the tip of his spear. "Go," he said. Without another word, Jack and Annie began marching across the grounds. If this is all part of the show, Jack thought, these guys are taking it way too seriously. Followed by the spear carriers, Jack and Annie walked through the blue moonlight until they came to a stone building with columns. The head warrior ushered them up uneven steps, opened a heavy wooden door, and motioned for them to enter. "Wait for the king," the warrior said. The cold, empty room had only a single window, which let in a shaft of moonlight. The warrior closed the heavy door, leaving Jack and Annie alone in the House of Columns. Chapter 6. Heart of the Wind. Well, I wouldn't exactly call this a luxury hotel, said Annie. She shivered. A damp wind was blowing through the open window. Jack was too stunned to speak. He reached into the swim bag and pulled out the travel guide. He walked to the window and studied the cover by moonlight. "Oh," he whispered, and then pointed to one of the small paintings. "I think I get it now." "Get what?" said Annie. Jack looked at her. "This isn't a theme park." "I was starting to think that too," said Annie. "But what is it?" "It's real," said Jack. "Real?" said Annie. "What do you mean, real?" "I think we've accidentally come to the actual time of ancient Mayans," said Jack. "Like when?" said Annie. "Like maybe over 1,000 years ago, when they wore feathers and fought with spears." "But how is that possible?" said Annie. "Teddy sent us to Cozumel now, in our time." "That's what he was supposed to do," said Jack. But maybe when you pointed at the cover of the book, you pointed at the painting of the ancient pyramid, the way it looked like over 1,000 years ago. Teddy must not have known the pyramid painting would send us back to Cozumel instead of now. Oh, wow. You mean all this time we've been in an ancient world? Said Annie. Yep, we didn't land in a modern nature preserve, said Jack. Oh, said Annie. That's why we didn't see any tourists or ferries or cruise ships, said Jack. Right, said Annie, nodding. She looked back at the cover of the guide. Too bad I didn't point to the luxury hotel. No kidding, said Jack. These guys have probably never seen people like us before, said Annie. Probably, said Jack. Definitely. We're from the future, more than 1,000 years in the future. What should we do? Said Annie. There's only one thing to do. We have to get out of here and back to the tea house, said Jack. Before the king comes. Can we escape through the window? Annie walked over and looked out the open window. Darn, guards are patrolling the building. So we can't get out that way, said Jack. Oh, I know what we can do, said Annie. We can use our last gold coin to help us. Of course, perfect, said Jack. He grabbed their swim bag. Yes. We'll make a wish to escape all the way back to the tea house, with no warriors capturing us or sharks attacking us. I think that would qualify as fun. Let's make a wish to fly from this window across the sea, said Annie. That would be so fun. No kidding, said Jack. He knelt on the floor and dug inside the bag for the velvet coin purse. Where is it? He pulled everything out. Flippers, life vests, snorkels, and face masks. Where is it? Where's that coin purse? Jack turned the bag upside down and shook it. He and Danny shook the flippers and the life vests too, but no small green velvet purse fell out. It's not here, said Jack. Did you put it back in here? Annie looked confused. Did I? That's what I'm asking, said Jack. Did you? I don't know, said Annie. I remembered I put the $500 in the purse, and then we pushed the raft, and then we heard the music, and so when did you put the purse back in the bag? Asked Jack. I don't know, said Annie. Maybe I didn't. Maybe I put it down on the sand to push the raft. Seriously? Said Jack. That's what I sort of remember now that I think about it, whispered Annie. Oh no, I lost all our money and the magic coin. I'm so sorry. It's okay, said Jack. It'll be okay. We just need to get out of here and climb back down to the beach before the king comes. And find our coin purse, said Annie. Right, said Jack. He took a deep breath. Okay, one thing at a time. First, Before he could say more, the door swung open. Jack quickly crammed everything back into their bag. The room was suddenly filled with fiery lights. Warriors with burning torches entered the room. Several women followed the warriors. The women had large jade ornaments in their ears and wore dresses woven with red, yellow, and purple threads. They placed flowers on the floor, along with bowls filled with corn, beans, chili peppers, and pineapple slices. 2 men then stepped into the room, the same 2 men who had sat on the thrones. They must be kings, Jack thought. But why are there 2 of them? The 2 kings wore feather headdresses that were at least 3 feet high. Around their shoulders were jaguar skins. Their arms were covered with bracelets. The older-looking one had long white hair. A girl with black braids stood beside him, the same girl who'd spoken to Annie near the wall. Everyone stared at Jack and Annie. "Hi," said Annie. "We come in peace," said Jack. The younger of the two kings stepped forward. "Who are you?" the man asked. "Jack and Annie of Frog Creek, Pennsylvania," said Annie. "How did you get here?" the king asked. "By raft," said Jack, "from Cozumel." The older king picked up the travel guide from the floor. "What is this?" "Oh no," thought Jack. He'd forgotten to put their book back in the bag. The king turned the book upside down and sideways. He stared at the back and the front. "It's a travel guide," Annie said helpfully. "A travel guide," the older man repeated. His face was lined with wrinkles, and his eyes were bright and alert. He opened the book and stared at a page, pointing to a photo of a plane landing at the Cozumel airport. He looked puzzled. "That's a plane," said Jack. "It flies," said Annie. She moved her hand through the air, like a bird. The older king looked at the younger king and shrugged. He ruffled the pages, and the book fell open to a photo of a cruise ship. "That's an ocean liner," said Jack. "It carries thousands of people across the ocean," said Annie. The king turned to more photos. One showed a water skier, and another showed an underwater tourist boat. "Speedboat," said Annie. "Submarine." The king turned the page and stared at a photo of skyscraper hotels. On the opposite page was a photo of a guest room with a girl working on a computer and a boy watching a football game on TV. Neither Annie nor Jack tried to explain. As the king turned more pages in the book, Jack glanced around the room. He caught the gaze of the young girl. She was the only person smiling. Finally, the old king closed the book and looked at Jack and Annie for a long time. He handed the book to Jack. Then he turned and nodded to the younger ruler. The two kings and the girl walked out the door back into the night. The women followed, and then the warriors. One of the warriors left his flaming torch in a stone sconce. Then he closed the door, leaving Jack and Annie alone again in the dimly lit room. "I wondered what they were thinking," said Annie. "Are we their prisoners or their guests?" "I don't know," said Jack, shaking his head. This dream vacation had turned into a nightmare. "Should we eat the food?" asked Annie. "I'm not hungry anymore," said Jack. "Me neither," said Annie. "I just thought it might be polite." "I guess we'd better learn more about ancient Mayans," Jack said. He opened the guide and found a section titled Mayans. By the light of the torch, he read aloud. "Today many Mayans live in Mexico and other parts of Central America. Long ago, before Columbus discovered the New World, Mayans had their own civilization. They created their own calendar and had a special form of picture writing. They were skilled farmers, astronomers, and architects." Before Jack could read more, the door opened again. The girl with the bangs and shiny black braids slipped into the room. She closed the door and smiled at Jack and Annie. "Hi," said Annie. "What's your name?" "Heart of the Wind," said the girl. "That's a beautiful name," said Annie. "Thank you," said Heart of the Wind. "My father meets with his council now." "Who's your father?" asked Annie. My father is the great sun, said the girl. He rules the kingdom of Palenque. It is many days from here in the jungle. Was the great sun the one who looked at our book? Asked Jack. Yes, said Heart of the Wind. He has been traveling the land to find his true heir. Weeks ago we stopped here in the city of Dawn to visit with the king and rest. My father did not know that this would be the place where he would find what he was looking for. She smiled at Jack. Do you understand? I'm not sure, said Jack. What am I supposed to understand? He thought. My father believes that you are the one he has been searching for, said Heart of the Wind. Me? Said Jack. My father just told me that he believes the gods have sent you to be our next king, said Heart of the Wind. Jack? Said Annie. Your next king? Jack, the girl said, nodding. I am my father's only child. He has no sons, so he has decided to take Jack back to our kingdom and prepare him to be our ruler. Me? Jack said again. Yes, said Heart of the Wind. You will be the next great son of Palenque.